I'm Dan Williams. I've been a longtime volunteer for the Mobile Area Interfaith Conference, which has a really very interesting story in history and should be known to the community. It probably is not for most people. It actually started back in 1979 with Hurricane Frederick here in Mobile, when the downtown churches realized there were not a lot of resources for people who didn't have much to begin with. So they got together, all the churches got together and formed what was then known as the Conference of Downtown Churches. First of all, they opened a soup kitchen on Dolphin Street, and that people that didn't have anything to eat for a few days, whatever, could line up in the parking lot in the back and come through 20 at a time, have a meal, and then exit the front, and another 20 would come in. So that's really what started, just the churches getting together. So it really was a faith-based movement, knowing that congregations of churches, of people of faith, could accomplish so much more if they just got together and worked together. So the next thing they did, though, because it was also a need, was to form a food bank at the same location, but a room next door. And it was the beginning of what has now become the Feeding the Gulf Coast food bank here that serves the Florida Panhandle of Alabama and the Mississippi coast. So that's the kind of thing that MEIC, Mobile Area Interfaith Conference, has done also, is kind of incubating things or helping them to get started. And look what that has become. Later on, they also got very interested in homelessness, because then they were so much more aware that there were so many homeless, particularly downtown. So they organized what was then known by the mid-90s as the Homeless Coalition of Mobile. And today, that's Housing First, Inc., which is the homeless coalition for Mobile and Baldwin County. So that's kind of an interesting story. All that was done while it was not even actually incorporated. It was just an informal group, met monthly at different churches downtown. Over time, it grew to not just downtown churches. There were congregations outside of downtown who wanted to participate and have representation. I think the basic mission was to meet unmet community needs, that maybe the faith community was where it should really happen, because we're all kind of drawn to serving our community, serving others. So working collaboratively, we could get that done. To really reach out to the greater community for involvement in this organization, we renamed it to become Mobile Area Interfaith Conference. And it is just that, absolutely. And by that time, there were 2 Jewish congregations participating, 2 Muslim congregations, in addition to 15 Christian congregations. So it really did reflect the community and the things that we wanted to do to work together. In 2001, the board, or the group, it really wasn't a board at that time, realized there was definitely a very obvious unmet need in the community, and that had to do with Mobile County Metro Jail. There was no chaplain for the inmates at the jail. And so Reverend Charles Feld, who was the president of the organization at that time, a Methodist minister, he really pushed the group to, let's do that for the community. And that was really a great development, because then at that time, starting with just a few congregations who wanted to come in and do services, over time it ended up being about 24 different congregations. Obviously, though, there was a problem about where to have the religious services in the jail. There wasn't a lot of space for it. So in 2007, MEIC organized to build a chapel and office complex inside the jail, which we did. We raised $170,000, remodeled the old kitchen when they opened a new kitchen in the jail into that complex. That made it possible to have really actual religious services in the jail for any inmate who wanted to come in, who could sign up and be allowed to come to a religious service. It also allowed the chaplain to do a lot more, to bring in other people, educators. We started providing educational services, reading courses, basic education. And so that went well. And so, it just seemed like everything we did kind of led to something else. By 2009, we were getting really more into the educational component of it. And by 2011, Goodwill Eastersill agreed to come into the jail. They're certified, what's known as a graduate education degree, general education degree, GED, to come in as a certified agency and to sponsor GED classes in the jail. And that set us into a whole new mode of things happening. And so we were delighted with that. To really do a better job with GED, though, we needed a classroom. So the jail agreed to let us remodel a space next to our chapel complex into an authentic, certified GED classroom with all the technology required to be really certified. And that happened in 2013. At the time that was happening, though, we began to realize, in fact, we began to realize we had members of by that time it was a board of directors. We had members on that board, which included Linda Herm and Sister Judith Smits from the Catholic community, who were pressing us to look at what is happening to them when they get out, pointing out that a lot of the inmates who are released, you see them back there in a year or 2 years or whatever, because they have so many barriers to overcome. I mean, how do you go out into the community, find employment, find housing, transportation, reunite with your family, all those things that can happen to you when you're released. So there again, working with Reverend Charles Fell, who was also on the board at that time, they pressed for that, and it was agreed. The board agreed in 2013 that it would take on the challenge of opening a community-based center for reentry. At the same time, there was a group being formed by the U.S. Attorney Kenyon Brown at the time for reentry, and he wanted to have a strategic plan for reentry for Southwest Alabama, the area that he covered in his job with the Department of Justice. Senator Vivian Figures with the state legislature agreed to chair that group. And between the years 2015 and 2017, they created that strategic plan. Well, it fit right in with what Mobile Area Interfaith Conference was doing, because it called for a community-based center for that purpose. And so that was adopted by the community, and that task force really represented the greater community. It was the business leaders, the religious leaders, volunteer leaders of the community who actually formed that task force and made that happen. So we've been kind of living off that strategic plan ever since. It was called the Neighbor Center because the thinking was that we're serving our neighbors. These are our neighbors. We are their neighbors. When they're coming out, we are called to serve them and to see if we can help them as advocates overcome some of those barriers. And so it's working with them as their advocates in service to them to try to help them and to do that. It's called case management. And so it's either both volunteers and staff members who play a significant role. At the same time, we're working with the jail ministry, which is still underway in the jail, helping what they're doing. They're helping prepare those who are going to be released for maybe and encouraging them to come to the Neighbor Center when they are discharged. And it did have a significant impact on the number of what's called recidivism, those going back into jail, particularly if they had housing. So we felt like, a lot has happened that's been good and very encouraging. And we do think it has a lot to do that all of us involved with this organization, it's a calling for us. We're all called to this by what we believe, by our faith. We believe that faith in action is the thing to do. That's how we really express ourselves. And we hope that we are examples to those who make use of the services, both in the jail and at the Neighbor Center, as being persons who are, sharing with them what we believe about life and the purpose of life, and that they have someone have those working with him who are not judgmental, who are just there to be of assistance to the extent we can.